Hello, my fan is on, so if you hear any noise, it's hot as fuck in here. It's really goddamn hot. Um, I wanted to record an unscripted video today. Because I've been reading a lot. I've been reading a lot of reading a lot of reading. So I even made a tiny little outline just now about how much I've been reading. So I'm going to talk about what I've been reading and my reading habits and how cool reading is. I like reading a lot of stuff. Um, First and foremost, right? Well, first of all, I've been going to a library, right? The library is the greatest place to read. Highly recommended. Um, Mostly because it's designed specifically to be the place to read, but it is also a place in which you can do this thing where you reserve the study rooms. I usually do that because study rooms have unequivocal, um, uninterrupted access to reading technology, such as my brain. My brain is the best technology for reading of all time. It is the epitome of how I understand words and decode things, etc., etc. So basically, having a nice quiet place to just go and read is basically great for getting actual reading done by a lot. Because if you try and read in a place that has a lot of noise, if you try and read in a place that distracts you with so-called content, then you're not getting much reading done. Like whenever I try to read, I literally put earplugs in because it's like if I can't lock in like that. Also, I got really bad fucking ADHD. It's kind of bad, but the whole thing about it is that the quieter it is, the better it is for reading. I think that's the main thing about it. And I feel like that's for everyone, but just they don't want to admit it because some people are like, no, I could read in here. I can read this loud place, and they're not even absorbing what the hell they're talking about. It's like, bro, they're fucking bro, just fucking go to another room. um, and honestly, most people, like I said, been common thing. Most people just don't like reading. They just don't try to read, and I think that's a shame because reading is cool. But I specifically don't read prose fiction that often. The only book that I've been reading that's prose fiction, I mean, I've been reading Kurt Vonnegut's stuff for a while, and I've been trying to do a reread of what's it called, The Catcher in the Rye, um, because that's my one of my favorite prose fiction books. Just because it's very moody. I like the tone of it, but it's very hard for me to find prose fiction books that I actually like, because it's got to be very specific. I don't know what the qualifications for being a prose fiction book I like are, but they have to be like, I don't know. It's like the stars have to friggin' align for me to like want to read it, right? So. But the main thing about it is that I've been reading, but yeah, I mean, I think one time I tried to do a book club with multiple people, and I tried reading um, Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut, right? I mean, I was the only one who's really digging through that book, but I think I got like, I want to say like 75% through the book, and the book was fantastic. I love the book, but I always call myself Professor Calamitous because cannot finish anything ever at all, and I don't have to necessarily finish any books or finish any games or finish my goddamn food, but I'm just saying it would be nice every once in a while. It'd be cool. It could be so awesome. It could be so cool if I could just finish something, because I don't know, it just feels like sometimes I feel kind of sad about it. But usually that's why I usually absorb lower length things more often, because like like not anime movie, like movies in general, films, or like you know short articles, zines and shit. Um and that's why I have a tendency to go towards nonfiction. I read a lot of nonfiction, a ton of nonfiction, mostly about niches I like music and video games. Um, my favorite nonfiction niches has always been video game books, because the history of video gaming is so interesting, and it's kind of underrated in terms of like, you know, historians, I guess, because obviously with video game history, it's all been formed by like, people like Scott the Woz on the internet, right? And of course, because of various aspects, not including niches and the interest of nerds on the internet, it's all very Nintendo focused, right? And when it's not Nintendo focused, it's under a Nintendo lens, right? Because Sega is not really, even though Sega was literally the Sega's console market, I guess, console section of their company was formed literally to compete with Nintendo's consoles. It's not all supposed to be relative to Nintendo, especially in the later years of their video game prowess, right? Because and the whole thing about like Sega's history, right, is that there's a defined American focus on most of the things that are consumed through YouTube or in general, just because of honestly, it's like a lot of historical aspects. I mean, there's various reasons, but specifically because the companies in which the platforms are generally in the United States, and because they're in the United States, they usually push more of that stuff because the reasons, I guess. So you see Scott the Woz before you see anybody, really. I'm not saying that Scott the Woz is bad. I like his videos, but I'm saying like, the perspective is defined by the most popular people, and it's mostly American people. It's mostly Nintendo fans, and it's mostly comedic focus, right? So, even though Jeremy Paris is, I think he's American, he's not going to have much, as much of an audience, despite the fact that I think his gaming history videos are fantastic, amazing, because, gaming history is a niche within video games as a whole. So I think supporting and reading video game books are very interesting. Like, I don't know if I talked about this before, but I read the entirety. Yeah, it's good because I read the entirety. I read the entirety of the book. It's like a what's it called? Fuck, it's a JRPG history book. Let me just look it up real quick. I got an EPUB file of it. Hold up, JRPG history book. The book is called Fight Magic Items: The History of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and the Rise of Japanese RPGs in the West. One of my favorite books I've read over, in general, but because I don't finish many books, but I thought the book was fantastic. I really liked it. Because I actually got through it. I must have like really liked it. But the main thing about it is that, the coverage of history is pretty even-handed. I really respect the way they did like the history of the medium of JRPGs and how it relates. Because, I think the main thing about JRPG history is that, sure, you could cover the history of the thing in Japan, but my perspective is how people reacted to it in the United States. Because, of course, that's like, I reside here, love it or hate it. So basically, whenever they have a chapter about Final Fantasy IV doing like okay, not amazingly, but like better than usual, then it's like that shit means something, man. It's like because they tried to push Dragon Quest 1 and it didn't do well, right? But they put Final Fantasy 4, there's something there like, oh, it's an uptick in unpopularity, right? People really liked it, right? So it's like it's subtle things like that, right? It's subtle things like the rise of MMOs, the Mr. Walker games, and the Wii's like few RPGs from those like 3 studios and Project Rainfall. It's Final Fantasy 7 being like an entire like section of the book, honestly, and the response to it and the respective answers to Final Fantasy 7's legacy. Like, it's like that's a very highly recommended book if you're really interested in JRPGs. And also, if you're a Freshies fan, because I know that the people listening to this might actually like my shit I make. I read it specifically to make sure I made Nina's RPG rants extremely accurate. Not only because I need to be accurate, but because I actually like RPGs in real life. Can you believe a character that I made is based on me? Who would have figured? But yeah, I recommend that book highly if you like RPGs, JRPGs, and you are interested in the history of them. even if you're not like, super into JRPGs, I think like just like the coverage of the bigger series would get someone interested into a few smaller games, because there are ones that even like, because I wasn't really thinking about Golden Sun too much, because Golden Sun is like one of those games that's like kind of passed me by, right? I never was like a Golden Sun fan, despite playing a lot of Game Boy Advance games. It just never really appealed to me. But I put it in my mind I might go play Golden Sun one day, especially because Camelot made a couple of other games that are notable, like the Mario tennis series, and they worked on a bunch of Sega Saturn games. So yeah, I mean, I think like I want to just say that good book. I think it was a very good book. So that's once again, that is Fight Magic Items by Aidan Mower, and I think video game books as a niche are just very very cool. So hopefully, like I if I could interview Aidan Mower and see how much effort it took to make this book, that'd be cool. But yeah, I have a lot of books I've been thinking about. This is just coming from what's on the top of my head. I probably talked about this book before, but I just want to talk about reading books because I've been reading a lot of books. So, I mean, yeah, nonfiction is my big thing. Like I've been having a fixation on the Beatles for a while now. I love the Beatles. And with the Beatles, luckily for me, it's a band that you really don't have an end into the information you can get. Now, in terms of the actual music, they only made like what 200 or so songs, which is like comprised of like 11 albums or something. Maybe like, but because they have a lot of music, right? So whenever you listen to one album, right, you'll probably listen to the album for a while and then move on to another album, and then you'll listen to another artist and come back to the first album, right? So the main thing about the Beatles is that you'll have this revolving doors of albums you're into by the Beatles and songs you're humming along into in your head. But I don't think you'll ever, if you like the Beatles, you'll never be bored. You'll never get out of music. You'll never have like a moment where you're like, I don't want to listen to a Beatles song ever again. At least in my opinion. Like for me right now, right? The first Beatles album I got into was Revolver. I don't know why. I think it was just because Frank Ocean is like this on the edge of Blonde, which is one of my favorite albums of all time, probably like my second or maybe first, depends on the day. On the second half of it, there's White Ferrari, right? And he interpolates this Beatles sample from Here, There, and Everywhere. So he's like, spending each day of the year, White Ferrari, have a good time, or something like that. And then I looked up cause I like the samples of stuff, and they covered that, and then I listened to that song, and it's a really good song. Here, There, and Everywhere is probably one of the Beatles' best songs. And I listened to Revolver, and I'm like, oh, this is a great album. I love this album, and that's probably my favorite Beatles album for a good while. And and I progressively got more and more to the Beatles as time went on. Nowadays, I'm feeling kind of tepid on Revolver. I think side one is like it's so front loaded, but a lot of Beatles albums are very front loaded. But like, I think Revolver is like the worst case of where like side one is like carries the quality, because I'm not really a big fan of most of the songs on side two. I'm not a fan of I think the mixing on a lot of the second half is what gets me, even though I like like the 2022 remix is amazing, right? I think like some of the tracks are just like they have focus on weird things, because like I listened to the different takes of the tracks, and I'm like, oh, this sounds better than the original, also I think like it's like a lot of the Beatles songs, a lot of Beatles albums, they have like this issue where they would leave the best tracks on singles or whatever. So like Paperback Writer and Rain, right? I think they're better than like let's say Dr. Robert and like I Want to Tell You or something like that, right? Like I think they're more interesting songs, right? But they're not on there because they're designed to be singles, and that's just kind of different in the music industry, which is fine. But I just think like Revolver has an issue with side B, right? But because like there's good all the tracks are good, right? Like there's no bad tracks in Revolver. I think maybe like Dr. Robert's kind of boring. I kind of think that one just kind of meanders a little bit. But I don't think the other tracks are really bad. I just think that like, it's like the same thing with Nevermind, where it's like, it might be the track placement. I don't know. But then again, Nevermind, it's like all the tracks are great. I loved all the tracks. It's that the placement of the tracks like kind of forces a certain mood in the last quarter of the album or whatever. And like the Revolver, it does have a variation in themes and ideas. It's just that the mixing, like the She Said, it has like that guitar being the front end of it, and it's oh no 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 no, and it's a great guitar. It's a very catchy song. But I think like, the mixing of it is just not my preference in terms of mixing. You know what I mean? That's my whole thing about it. But I mean, this isn't a fucking review of Revolver. Well, actually it is now. So I might as well finish reviewing Revolver. So I mean, the thing about Revolver is that, yeah, since it's front loaded, I'll listen to the album and then I'll just be like, okay, by the time it gets to like Good Day Sunshine, I'm like, okay, I kind of had enough. And Anya Birkin sings a great track actually. And For No One is a great track, but it's like, just like I'm kind of tired by the time Tomorrow Never Knows come around. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of good. Also, Tomorrow Never Knows is probably that's the track that made me realize like, oh, the Beatles kind of had it though. They kind of cooked. It was, yeah, Tomorrow Never Knows and I'm Only Sleeping. I fucking love I'm Only Sleeping. It's probably one of my favorite tracks of all time. In the morning, lift my head, I'm still yawning when I'm in the middle of a dream. Stay in bed. Float upstream. Please don't wake me, no, don't shake me. Leave me where I am. I'm only sleeping. I fucking love that track. I think John Lennon's songs in the Beatles usually are the best ones, my favorite ones on an album. It's not like they like are like massively better. It's just that I prefer the way he writes and what he writes about and the way like his music sounds, right? But I think all together that's what made the Beatles a really thing. So since I'm on the topic, so Revolver is like the track, the one I first got into, right? So the main thing about it is that I'm falling in. Revolver stocks are down. In fact, they're at an all-time low. 2025, not a Revolver year for me. This is somehow the year of Sgt. Pepper's. I don't know how I did it, but Sgt. Pepper's finally clicked this year. Before I was like, yeah, Sgt. Pepper's good, but I don't know about certain tracks. But no, now I think about it, it's a 10 out of 10. I think me re-listening to A Day in the Life, like sometimes I just listen to A Day in Life, I'm like, this is the greatest song of all time. I have never once felt like A Day in Life was less than one of the greatest songs ever created by humans. It is actually, I think it's like, somehow it is life affirming, but it's not, it's not like life affirming in the way that like Siegfried by Frank Ocean is, where it's like, it'll make me fucking cry, but it's like life affirming and like, it really, if I was going to show an alien a song, and show them, this is how life feels on planet Earth, I'd probably show them A Day in the Life, because it's just like, it's somber, and then light, and then like, chaotic, and then it's like very peaceful, and then it has like, and it ends with a, question mark. I think that's like the whole thing about it. And A Day in the Life really means a lot to me as a song, especially like the line, he blew his mind out in a car. He didn't notice that the lights had changed. I don't know why, but that line really like speaks to me, because it's just like, I think like, especially I think in the interviews, right? They're kind of coy about what all those lines mean. Sometimes they're like, it doesn't mean anything. He means it got, thinged on drugs. He blew his mind out metaphorically. And then it means, and it's like, oh no, he actually murdered himself in the middle of a fucking traffic jam in a car. It was a politician who did that, and I could never get the read on it. But like, the idea of John Lennon just reading an article about a guy who just shot himself in a fucking car and just kind of laughing like, that's life. I'm just like, it's wacky in a weird distorted life way. It's like, it's like one of those like laugh so you don't cry moments. It's like, yeah, it just happens. It's how life is. I'm just like, I feel like that's why I think John Lennon as a writer was probably my favorite in the Beatles, because he always has like a weird like dark political aspect to him, even on the songs that are like, more light, because well, first of all, John Lennon had it rough. I ain't gonna lie. Even though he was, abusive, he has his issues. I will say he's an interesting character. He's an interesting guy. He's a guy that you I think it's a guy that you should really have your own opinions about. I feel like I can be sometimes even handed on, a little too forgiving on him sometimes, but I do think that he legitimately tried to improve his life and tried to get better, like on this track, getting better all the time, better, better, better. I do think he's an imperfect man, but I think that first of all, what celebrity isn't? What person that's notable really isn't is a perfect person, But I also think that I generally think his heart was in the right place, especially as time went on. He got more political. I do think he had his heart in the right place, and he's just fighting for something beyond himself. So I think A Day in the Life probably is the best song, one of the best songs the Beatles have made. I think it's kind of tough because I have a lot of favorite songs by the Beatles, like another John Lennon classic, I Want You, She's So Heavy. Fucking amazing song, one of my favorite songs. I've been really listening to Dig a Pony. Dig a Pony. I don't know, I like that one right now. Glass Onion is a great one. Martha, My Dear, underrated track. I really like the piano on that one. Also, Good Nights. Strangely, I don't know, the strings on that one. I have a soft spot for Baroque pop. Anything that uses strings in a pop context, uses very lush strings. The strings in Goodnight remind me of the end of Evangelion, where they use all those strings, and really it just gets an emotion out of me that I cannot describe. Also, Why My Guitar Gently Weeps. I mean, obviously, fucking obviously. Underrated track, Blue Jay Way. The mood on that track, I don't know, something about it just feels specifically ahead of its time. I don't know, man. I'm just going through all the albums and picking my favorite tracks at this point. Basically, that's what I'm saying. Every part of Sgt. Pepper just hits for me now. Even Within Without You, even Good Morning most of the time. Within You Without You, it took a while to warm up on me, but I had I think I watched the someone, I think Lunar Reviews or something. No, it was I watched the Making of the Beatles. It's one of my favorite channels right now, right? And then the guy who does that channel has a very positive opinion on Within You Without You, and them covering the making of it kind of opened my eyes to how interesting it is, right? Because it's a lot of that stuff. Context really does make you view art differently, right? Because before I was it's kind of a slog for the pacing of the album, but now I'm oh no, it's kind of lush, and it's kind of trying to make you sink into a mood that's different than what's the other parts of the album. It's also George Harrison's most important part of the album. I think it's the only track he made of the album. So, but if you're doing a full listen through the album, don't skip Within You Without You. It's worth it, especially because the strings and the sitars and all the Indian instruments are just so well placed. I really think that I the more time that passes, the more I appreciate George Harrison's genuine interest in Indian culture. It's very few times that especially in the years in which they resided as a band, that a band was so interested in different cultures and artists integrating it like that. I think just the Rolling Stones did that that part with in Painted Black. They had that one Indian instrument, but I think George Harrison really liked India. He really fucked with India heavy, and I fuck with. I'm George Harrison fucked with India heavy. I'm okay, this man actually because if it was just a thing he was just doing for a phase, he wouldn't just go back there and make half his songs about India and include Indian instruments and Indian musician. No, he was about it, and I'm you know what, fucking man, I appreciate that. As time goes by, I really appreciate George Harrison's appreciation of Indian music and India in general. I think that I think that's probably one of his most defining, charming features to me. He was an amazing songwriter, especially in his All Things Must Pass era. It depended on the year if he was as good as that, but yeah, I think that I really appreciate that in retrospect. So whenever that song clicked, I think the whole album kind of clicked for me in retrospect. So I'm like, I used to think that Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane it's like a tragedy that they weren't on the album, which I'm still mixed on because I'm like they are probably some of the other best tracks the Beatles made. Obviously, like they're celebrated and massively claimed and shit. But I think that like because I feel like including them on Magical Mystery Tour was a good choice. I wish that one would get remastered or remixed or whatever soon enough. I think that was a good move because they included it on an album, so it's not like just the two lost singles. The two of the greatest songs of all time are just stuck on random singles for forever. Because people listen to the culture shifted from singles to albums now, generally, or at least playlists. So, I appreciate that they did that. I think Sgt. Pepper's as a work of art does it. It's not overrated. I think it's solidly rated. I think it's not underrated, definitely not underrated, but it is. I think it deserves every bit of acclaim it gets. Maybe a little overrated, but I think like the whole thing about it is that like it finally hit for me because the whole thing about Sgt. Pepper's is not only that it's just so interesting. Like in an artistic fixation way, I fucking love the album because every single element about it is just so like, learning more information about it just makes my brain feel happy, right? Because every single second I just like could just look up this about the album, who's this person on the cover, what's making the song, why did it have the little like looping thing at the end, about the reprints of the album, the remixes, all the different takes, every single person who's involved with the album. There's just so much of the story behind it, right? And it was like so important for music history. And the album itself is just really, really good. I think it's just like, it's fun. It has like a lot of depth to it. All the songs are made in unique like places. Like the psychedelia made the inspirations very distinct, especially for the time. Like there's a track that sounds like it's from a circus. There's a track that just, it's like sounds like a regular guitar based, rock song. There's a couple tracks with harpsichord. There's a track with like literally just orchestra. There's a track with like there's a bunch of clarinets. Obviously the Indian track, a lot of Indian instruments. The reprise of Sgt. Pepper's is just the hardest drums of all time. They sampled an Earthbound. I was like, why they sample an Earthbound? Also, I was like, whoa, Ringo was hitting that shit. Like there's like Lucy with the Sky of Diamonds with like the weird like new synthesizer that no one had. I think it's like I think it uses like literal tape loops of a piano to make that sound. I think that was interesting. They still have so much variation in the instruments to make it like a unique mood. And it's like the blue sky on the album cover, which would be funny if they took that photo at like 8:00 p.m. or some shit. But like I think the main thing about it is that it's like the epitome of a day album, right? Like, it's like Sgt. Pepper's is an album for a beautiful day. Even ends with a song called "A Day in the Life," right? And if you know me, I am very big on albums matching or pieces of art matching moods and especially times of day. I think like that's a very easy way to make me have an identity for an album, or like for a piece of work, right? Like, I associate Memphis rap with like, dark drives at fucking midnight, and it's like, North Memphis, South Memphis, Westwood, like, I think that's like the perfect. I don't get high. I don't got high money, but I'm saying if I did, it probably would be like the perfect thing to do. Just lay about and listen to fucking 3-6 Mafia's Underground Volume 1 or some shit. All day, every day. But yeah, I think Sgt. Pepper's clicking for me was probably a big aspect of why I think I've been getting into the Beatles again, and a part of that is me collecting some of the books from the Beatles because I've been buying some books on clearance, and I have a couple. I have like 4 or 5 books on the Beatles. I have A Hard Day's Right. I have a book on 2 books on John Lennon's albums. It was one on Imagine and one on the Plastic Ono Band. I have one on Get Back, and I think I might have another one. I don't remember though. I want to get more, but I don't really need that many more. I might get one on John Lennon. Just like I read a John Lennon biography one time. I checked it out from the library, and I didn't get too far in it because it was pretty fucking dense. But the whole thing about it is that I think the Beatles are cool, and I like them. I think it's a really interesting band, and I really like researching them and thinking about them and just seeing how they thinged. Because the main thing about the Beatles is also as a musician, I have a right, I have a need to know how the Beatles wrote their music because researching and studying the Beatles makes you a better songwriter. I think that in terms of at least like learning pop structure, because every time the Beatles wrote a song, pretty much they used the pop structure unless the song was like a short. Even when the song was short, they kind of just repeated like their bar phrases somehow. They were like the masters of the verse, chorus, verse. And the reason I'm doing this is because Kurt Cobain did the same thing because he really, really, really liked the Hard Day's Night or something. I don't know why. Or was it? I think it might have either been with the Beatles or a Hard Day's Night. I feel like it was a Hard Day's Night because he covered and I love her. And before I was like, oh man, why wasn't Kurt Cobain obsessed with Abbey Road? But now I'm realizing that the early Beatles catalog had a certain of course he listened to it as a kid, so it's whatever albums he had in his house. But the whole thing about it is I appreciated like the early stuff a little bit. I had like this compilation CD of like a lot of their early stuff, but I think it was just the American with the Beatles CD or whatever, something like that. But I remember it had That Boy Took My Love Away. I think that was a single before. I don't know. But my whole thing about it is that, now I'm really digging into the catalog, especially with the remake of the compilation, the 62 to 66 compilation, where they redid a lot of those mono tracks, and they sound really good. I've really been getting into the early stuff in comparison too, like I Want to Hold Your Hand is a really good track. All My Lovin', that was the one they played on the American show, the Billy Mitchell show. No, the some show, the show that like was broadcast to 50 gajillion people and made them famous instantly. Yeah, that was a song, very important song historically. This Boy, obviously amazing harmonies. They have a ton of good songs on here. Obviously Yesterday, one of their best songs. It's one of the early songs. I think, whenever they remake, what's it called? Rubber Soul. That's gonna be a big deal because Rubber Soul, sounding as good as the Sgt. Pepper's remix, it's gonna be great. It already sounds pretty good. The remaster, and I think like it sounds gonna see. It's not like I think the albums that probably need it the most are probably the earlier ones. Like, Please Please Me could just sound the way it does, but I feel like, A Hard Day's Night could use it. And honestly, Beatles for Sale, I'm not gonna lie to you, kind of warming up on Beatles for Sale. I thought that I hated it. I'm not a big fan of covers, Beatles covers. Not a big fan of them at all. But I think I like a couple tracks on here. Baby in Black, the thing, and also Mr. Moonlight, like some shit like that. Like, yeah, and that's another John Lennon song. Every single time, John Lennon is the one that's making all the interesting stuff. He made Norwegian Wood. I love Norwegian Wood. I need to read the book. Not related to the Beatles at all. It's just by Haruki Murakami, but I need to read that book anyway. It inspired so much of the media I like. But that's a good song. Michelle. That's finally a Paul McCartney song I mentioned, aside from Martha My Dear. In My Life, another John Lennon. See, I don't know what it is about John Lennon's writing. He just I think I like his writing the most. I think it's the way he writes. I don't know. Of course, like it's not like say like Paul McCartney. I don't like any of his, I love all the songs he makes generally on the album, but I think the favorites of the album are always just seem to be John Lennon tracks for some reason. I don't know. Must be like about like the energy. He seems like he twists and turns his voice in more a punk way, where Paul McCartney usually is more smooth with it, unless it's like a few tracks on the later half. He had like Oh Darling, and of course Helter Skelter. Which he doesn't do. And what's surprising about Paul McCartney is that he doesn't really go back to those like harsher Beatles moments too much in his like discography. At least as far as I know, maybe he does in some tracks, but apparently he doesn't. I don't know. I thought it was weird. I thought that Paul McCartney would, kind of get. I feel like he has a certain thing he likes in terms of music, and kind of generally sticks to that. They call him the ballad machine, but he can make some other stuff. He can make some other stuff. Whoa, dear, what can I do? Baby's in black and I'm feeling blue. Tell me, oh, what can I do? But yeah, I don't know. This is this was about reading at one point, not about the Beatles. But I love the Beatles, so I was gonna talk about them. Funny story, right? I'm related to the Beatles. First of all, so I bought this My Hero Academia box set, right? I put a best offer down one time, and it came out really low in comparison to what I was expecting. And they actually accepted it, and I had to pay, and I did have the money at the time because I don't put offers down for shit I don't have money for, obviously. So it got ordered, and it came to my house. And so because I not only, I'm like, I have to use things I buy, and it's kind of sunk cost fallacy, but also because because of a video, I forgot whose video it was. This video called like The Art of My Hero Academia or some shit, and it really shows that the actual video, the actual paneling and like art of My Hero Academia is pretty solid to sometimes amazing, right? I was interested in actually reading it, right? And I will say, I've been reading it. I'm at book 6 now. That's part of the Stain arc. And, I have some opinions. They're probably worth a full video, honestly. I don't feel like writing a video, so here's some basic opinions right here. MHA? It's one of the best selling manga of all time, so I won't say it's underrated. But I will say the opinion of, I think MHA is one of those interesting things because everyone has an opinion on it, right? Usually their opinion is like, ugh, ugh. But and then their opinion used to be like, oh, but now it's like, ugh, because it's like, apparently the writing gets drastically worse, and it makes me sad because I'm like, oh no, MHA is pretty cool right now, right? It has some things I like, but there are gonna be some parts that I probably don't like, because there are already some parts that I don't like. I wish Minato got ran over by a car, but he's not going to. So the main thing about it is that, MHA, I think the main opinion of MHA I have is whenever the villains appear, the manga gets like drastically better. Like there's one arc near the end of like the first season, I guess, of the anime, and like the story, it goes from like a 6 to an 8 instantly, and then it goes back to like a 7, and it goes like anytime there are villains involved, it goes like drastically up and interesting. Also, I think Ochako is cute. I like her. She's my favorite characters. I think she is adorable. I love anytime she appears. I wish she was the main character. Also, shout out to Toga. She hasn't appeared yet, but you know what you are. But yeah, I will say the characters, reading about them, they give me a more fully formed. I think I've warmed up on Deku as a character, or whatever his name is. I just call him Deku. I have no fucking clue what his name is anymore. I warmed up on Deku as a character, right? Before I was like, oh, he's ass, he's mid, he's just like complete dog, right? And now I'm like, oh no, he's chill, he's cool. He has like his ups and downs, but I think like, I was a little hard on him before. The main thing about MHA is that I the first couple episodes where he's like trying to work to get into the UA, they're fucking fantastic. I will say that because, especially in the anime, you really feel like that struggle. You feel that man was working, and the whole thing about it is I don't know, that's the only time in like anime history, not anime history, but like it's the only time in anime history where I felt the struggle that deeply, right? Because he was working his ass off to get into UA. Like it's like he had the opportunity, and he was like, I relate to that because like if I ever get opportunity, right, I'm like, I'm gonna use it to the best of my ability, unless like I'm being taken advantage of, right? And the whole thing about it is that he gets this opportunity from All Might, his idol, one of the biggest heroes, the top ranking hero of all time, or of the current time. And he's like, I'm not gonna waste this opportunity. All my dreams are coming true, so I'm gonna work every day and do it. And this man was on the fucking beach cleaning a goddamn beach with his arms. He was strong just in general as a high schooler. Like he was he was bodybuilder at the end of it, right? Like no one was fucking with him. Like so I think like, in terms of the idea of like, shonen anime put effort into your powers so you can win. I think it achieved that very early on. I think that's why I kind of grew to like Deku more, because he already had that one point where I liked him. But I think like, you know, I think there are parts where it goes up and down for me, right? Because, he's never the most interesting character on screen, but he's never the least. I think with a lot of anime, with a lot of manga or anime or whatever, the main character has a tendency to be the least interesting, like especially in isekai or like, romance or like whatever, where it's like the main character is an audience surrogate character. It's not really as big as an issue in shonen. I think it's more of an issue in like, the more like, more plotful, like the I think isekai is a big issue, like, it's like as a genre it's supposed to be like more like, based on self-fulfillment kind of thing, so like they leave the character a blank slate, right? I thought Deku was like that kind of character. It's kind of like boring, you kind of like cry baby lame character, but I think the main thing about it is I realized that Deku's a crackhead. Deku's a crackhead. He will break his own bones to achieve his goals. He does not give a shit. He's like the crash out character, and honestly, seeing him in that respect makes me respect him more, because the one thing that Deku has, he is going to put everything in his power to achieve his goal. This man does not give a shit. If there's a villain trying to rob a bank, this man will fling himself at the gun. He will do that. Deku is that kind of guy. He's a crash out king, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like before I was like, oh, he's a crybaby. He's kind of like, he's working hard, but he's kind of weak. He kind of weak spirited. He don't got it. He ain't bad at it. No, he's bad at it. Like I don't think y'all understand the sheer extent that Deku will go to get his goals done. He will do crazy things to get his goals done. So I'm saying, honestly, seeing MHA as a manga where a crash out king battles these cool ass villains, I'm like, that makes a lot better for me. I think it does. I think the 1A class is very hit or miss though. Like I hate Bakugo. Everyone should hate Bakugo. Todoroki, I have my ups and downs with him. He's really backstory. He's carried by his backstory. I love Ochako the bitch. I beloved her. The guy with the running shoes or whatever, he's chill. I think I'm at his arc right now where he gets a lot more development. I think I'm liking him. The electric guy actually is strangely charming to me. I don't know what it is about him, but I think it's like his thing. I will mention, like everyone says, MHA would have been a much better manga if it just was in college. Then they could arrest Mineta. But for a lot of different reasons, I think MHA Vigilantes is better in like terms of that respect, because like the MC is in college. He's just like a fucking studying like main. I hate the fact that I'm not an MHA fan, but I think that like the reason I'm really reading MHA is because no matter what, first of all, the art's amazing. Unequivocally, art's amazing. Art's fantastic. He had like 50 fucking assistants because it's the best-selling manga, or one of the best-selling mangas of all time. But the main thing about reading MHA right now is that I am getting a lot of information about like writing, right? Because MHA is not one of those critically acclaimed, the all-time, like everyone has to read it manga or whatever, right? It's not Berserk, right? It's like, it's what considered one of the like, the ones that's like the popular manga, right? And sometimes, I have to read a popular manga every once in a while, just like, or at least like ones that like I've missed out on, right? Because the main thing about it is that usually I stick away from, anime that are popular just because they're popular. Not just because they're popular, but like just because they don't really match what I'm interested in at that moment, right? Because sometimes I go back to them and I'm like, this is like I'll like, like I could do a reread of Naruto at some random point, right? And it's just like, I'm not like avoiding it because it's popular. I'm just like, MHA, I was kind of sick of the hype whenever it's happening, and now that it's done, I'm kind of just like, going back to it, seeing, when the smoke clears, like, is it a good manga, right? And even if it's like mixed, I have a lot of things that are beneficial I can get inspired by for my projects, and a lot of things that aren't good that I can like improve on and see like where they mistakes on, right? So like even I think, and also I mean obviously just enjoy it because a lot of my friends and associates, as it were, have read or watched MHA because it is very popular, right? So I have it's one of my few anime manga where no matter what I say about it, at least I have a lot of people to talk to about it. But yeah, so I will say that MHA is very interesting just because the people I talk to, the reaction to basically everything I talk about is just like interesting to analyze. I think coming into as a first timer is just like a unique experience because it's like watching someone consume Undertale for the first time or something, right? It's like these people usually they know all the plot beats from front to back, and they know all the fucking characters from front to back, and some of these people were obsessed with it back when they were younger. They read all the fucking fan fiction. So I think that the main thing about it is that it's a unique experience that I can have to read MHA in 2025. And I will say I'm apologetic for a lot of the aspects of it. I think I'm actually, and like I said, I'm enjoying my time with it. I don't regret it at all. I think I'm enjoying it. I think I'm willing to read at least from whatever I have of the box set. Maybe the rest of the manga if it stays like okay at least. But I'm not really the type of person to be like really attached to reading something to the end. As you know, because I don't finish fucking anything. But that's the whole thing about it. And I like for reference, right? I own a library worth of books. Like I own actually genuinely 300 plus books. So like my books sleep on my bed as much as I do. Like I'm literally turning towards my bed right now. There are probably 20 something books on my bed right now. And that's not including the MHA box set that used to be sitting on there. Oh, speaking of box sets, one of my hobbies is buying anime box sets or manga box sets because I think they're cool. And the shorter manga, they feel they're complete. They're kind of like complete. I think manga reads better physically. Generally, it doesn't really matter too much to me right now because I have a tablet now. I got a tablet for like dirt cheap. It's kind of cracked, but it reads manga and it reads PDF files, and I think that's cool. That's all I really need it for. In fact, I might literally get a new tablet just because I am enjoying this stuff so much. I actually, side note, I highly recommend getting a cheap tablet off of just like eBay or whatever, a used tablet just to read like manga off of. Because I know like e-readers are, first of all, e-readers have small amount of storage and they're non-replaceable storage, so you can't really put all your manga on there, despite the fact that it does read better on there. You could get like a Android e-ink one, but those are more expensive than both those options. But yeah, if you have a tablet, just go and get some. I think I didn't realize how like comfortable reading because PDF files I didn't read they were kind of useless to me before because I don't like reading them on my computer. They're too small for my phone. So now that I got a shitty tablet, then I could read it on there, right? And all I need the tablet for is reading manga and books or whatever. So I think that's pretty cool. But anyway, I have the Cells at Work box set. That was interesting. Because I think it was just an impulse buy at that point. Like who the fuck is reading Cells at Work? Who the fuck is reading Cells at Work? But I Cells at Work, I'm not gonna say I'm excited to read it. It was kind of like an impulse buy, but I'm not saying I think it's like it'll be cool. It'll be one of those ones that like it's just special to me. It means something to me because I like nonfiction. I like a lot of those like types of things where it's like informational stuff. I read a lot of just nonfiction about whatever the fuck. So reading a manga about just like anime girls who are or anime people because there's like the main character's a dude who are just like personified versions of cells. I fuck with that. Of course, Freshies as a series is a series about like animal hybrid people. So I have a very soft spot for Komodo Friends, which I should read the entirety of or watch. I mean, there is a manga, but the anime is different. But you know what I mean. So, but yeah, basically, manga box sets are fun to read, to have. I think they're pretty cool objects to have. To take up and I think like putting my money towards a $30 manga box set where I have the entire manga of something. And you can go back and read it or let a friend borrow it or give it away or put it into a library or whatever, just have it forever. That versus buying a $60 game where I'll play it probably one time and I still could give it to somebody, but it's like unless that game's a masterpiece, I probably just like kind of regret that purchase. I should have just waited for it to go down in price or whatever, unless it's a Nintendo game, but you know what I mean. I think that's the kind of thing. It's like if I think that if putting my money into manga just feels a lot better, especially the used market. The used market of manga is just really cool. There's a lot of stuff to look forward to. There's a lot of stuff to look for. The manga is like in a golden age right now. I will say, like manga before, like at least in America, right? Um, the manga market before was hit or miss, right? Because there are a lot of options for manga if you like shonen or if you like even like seinen, some shojo, but I think a lot of those like subgenres got left behind, right? But now that we're in like a very anime focused world now culturally, because like American cartoons are getting fucking gutted right now, so basically anime is our only option. Basically there's a lot of manga that are just getting pushed out that weren't really even considered before, and I think that's really cool. Like, like Gunsmith Cats, one of my favorite OVAs of all time. I don't really watch that many OVAs, but one of my favorite anime of all time. One thing I could just watch up and down, front to back. I show everyone whatever I can. It's got a new kind of like hardcover deluxe printing that I kind of want. It's like $30. And before I did not even consider the fact that Gunsmith Cats could get a reprint, because Gunsmith Cats back in the '90s got a print where it was like the giant like floppy style comic version. So this is the first time it's in the traditional bound manga book version here. As far as I know, I don't remember, but yeah, stuff like that. Like it's like I don't think it's like Hajime no Ippo. It's the other one. It's Tomorrow's Joe got the first English version printing of itself ever. I didn't even think that. First of all, I didn't think it wasn't printed already, but yeah, it just got it just now, just recently, And I think like we're kind of covering a lot of those blind spots when it comes to manga, right? Because the manga that like I was just reading Shaman King, right? A little bit of Shaman King. Shaman King's one of those manga that were very popular in Japan at the time, and did not have any crossover because of various reasons, but specifically because the anime was apparently hot ass. I don't know firsthand. I don't know, but people from what I've heard, people say like, "Oh yeah, the anime has a ton of filler. This is pretty bad." So I think the fact that we're kind of going in and like closing a lot of those gaps where it's like the difference between anime and manga in America, like like manga is it's considerably more niche than anime. In Japan, I feel like it's a lot more even-handed. But I think considering the book market in the United States, I think manga is like a good way for a lot of like having manga in stores, a lot more niche manga. Like it's a good way for people to be exposed to all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like I think that's like the main thing about it. So I don't know. I just think that's interesting. I just think that it is cool to have a lot of those, like, a lot of that stuff exist. I think it's cool. And yeah, by the way, I have a manga This is pretty fucking late to mention it, but I have a manga podcast. It started with my friend, Annie Moyen Arts. It's called Panel Pals. We had our first episode, we posted the first episode the other day, and I recorded an episode with them. It was Queensblade, the Queensblade manga, Queensblade, the Exiled Warrior, and we're gonna post that one soon. And so that's part of the manga I'm reading. And what I'm gonna be working on, another one for that show is gonna be Senran Kagura's manga, because most of this is on their like reading list, and Senran Kagura is a fixation that there's been streaming Senran Kagura up and down. So I can finally get into the Senran Kagura lore. I can finally talk about titty ninjas. So get excited for that. But in general, right, the whole thing about reading manga is that it fits into my schedule a lot better, right? And that's why I really think that manga's cool, because I can just carry it on my phone, my tablet, or whatever. I could just like read a manga when I'm just doing something, right? The same way I had for the e-reader. That's what got me back into reading a lot. Because if I want to watch an anime, right, I have to go home and sit down in front of a TV and kind of sit there, and hopefully my brain focuses on the anime. And it's kind of like and it's gonna take episodes. I'll skip through the intro, through the ads, a lot of episodes to get through. It's kind of a drag, especially because My brain doesn't really focus on that kind of stuff. Not really good at focusing on that kind of stuff. But for the manga, I just go in there. Usually I pay for a subscription, or I just like I will say I like paying for the Shonen Jump and Viz apps, because it's like for both of them it's like $5 here. Like $3 for the entirety of Shonen Jump's manga output is pretty much a deal. I mean, if you want to read Dragon Ball, you can just do that for like $3 for a month. I mean, of course, not really the biggest person on subscriptions, but I'm like, you know what? Like, listen, my whole thing about it is that when a subscription is fair and just, fair in price, I like supporting it, so they don't have to increase the price, and so they don't have to scrap and scrounge for shit. Because that's like, ad free, $3, forever has everything I want out of it. I will recommend shit like that because, fucking Netflix poob type shit is like ridiculously overpriced. They keep having ads. It's like, I think the whole thing about it is that I like supporting subscription services when they're just, because subscription services are convenience. They're getting me into a lot of manga that I never would have tried before, right? Like, for instance, One Piece. I am hopping on the One Piece train, a little late, and I wouldn't say I'm hopping on the train. I'm reading it. I'm at chapter about 72-3 right now. So I'm at the Arlon Park arc. That's when people say it starts getting good, right? But One Piece is one of those white whales, as it were, where it's like I hear about it all the time. Never got into it. I started reading it randomly because my friend is a big One Piece fan. We got a birthday party for him. And I was like, let me try One Piece, because I got like One Piece merch. I'm like, I kind of like it's already on the app that I was paying for anyway, right? And so I go and read it. I'm like, this is pretty solid. And then it gets better as it goes on. I do believe them when they say it gets better, because it's already gotten better from when I started. I think like the first couple arcs were, they weren't weak, but it's like they're like they're all right. And then it goes on like, oh, this is pretty good. And like as soon as Sanji appears, I'm like, oh, this is kind of fire. It's kind of fire. The fight where Sanji appears is kind of goes on too long, but I think like it'll progressively get better as time goes on. Like, so I'm excited to read One Piece. I'm going to chip through. It's not really like a thing because the whole thing about One Piece is mentality, right? It's very big a mentality, because if you say, oh, I have to read One Piece front to back, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. That's the people who even read One Piece, they don't even do it that way. Right? The whole thing about, first of all, you have to read One Piece. Don't watch One Piece. It's too fucking long. It's too much filler. The whole thing about it is that if you read One Piece, right, you can't go through it saying, I'm going to finish it, right? You have to go through, say, I'm going to enjoy what I read. If I don't finish it, then I'll finish it. If I do finish it, that's pretty cool, right? And the benefit of it is talking to your friends about One Piece. It's pretty cool, right? But it's not like something you have to do. That's my main thing about One Piece. And that difference in mentality is why I could start reading One Piece. Because I was like, I'm never going to read One Piece before, right? But now that I have access to it pretty readily, and now that I have the interest in it, and I've, dipped my toes in it, I'm like, okay, this is a pretty good cake. I'm gonna keep eating. I'm interested. I do think that One Piece is cool. And I'm like a super fan, but I think that like, I'm glad that I've done it. I think that it's nice to read, That's my main thing about it, right? So, like One Piece is one of those things that's like, I'm here for the journey, not the destination. You know what I mean? And like I said, I'm enjoying what I'm reading. I think One Piece, like I said, any kind of like, the thing about reading for me is that since I am a writer of music and of stories sometimes, any kind of, absorption of storytelling or information, that's why I like nonfiction so much, it will help me in some sort of way. Even if it never comes back, it helps me psychologically, right? Just to recover from like other stuff. But usually it helps me like if I have like I'm running out of things to like, I think I'm running out of things to write about, right? Or my brain's like feeling kind of like, oh, I don't have anything to put in the story. I could just take something out of my mind and just say, all right, I'm gonna include that, right? Like the one part where like there's the one Freshies episode where they started the mime band, right? I'm like, oh, mimes are hot. So I'm gonna do that. And then I like bands and I like the punk scene or whatever, local music. So I'm gonna do that, right? And then take my knowledge of those couple things, and they make me finish an episode, right? And so the main thing about it is that if I go and I need to finish an episode or I want to make something, I just want to have as much information as I can. And honestly, yeah, I just enjoy reading One Piece. It's just very satisfying to read. But I think just stuff like that is just very. That's why I like manga right now, because it's like it fits in my schedule and it's like my brain processes it a lot better. You know what I mean? Like I'm allergic to reading. I'm watching anime. Like the anime I've been watching. I've been rewatching Dragon Ball Z Kai a little bit. I got through the Vegeta arc. I'm pretty satisfied with that. We're stopping there. I think it was pretty nice. I really enjoyed it. Um, I was watching a little bit of Hajime no Ippo, a couple of anime movies. I was watching Magic Knight Rayearth, but I kind of got the season 2. And I was like, okay, I'm satisfied for now. I might go back to it soon. I'm kind of hankering for it a little bit. But also the outro of Magic Knight Rayearth, the second outro, is fucking immaculate. It has like this weird like dancey mood, and it's kind of like weird somber dance. It's like it shows how serious the plot has gotten in comparison to season 1. But it's kind of also catchy, and I just want to mention that because it's cool. Yeah, like I the reason I'm even recording this is because I read like the first chapter of Shaman King just now, because I got it from like Humble Bundle fucking years ago, and I put the PDF in my tablet, and I was like, oh, let me read Shaman King because I bought it for like $1, right? I'm like, you know what? Pretty good. I think that I was expecting Shaman King. I was expecting it to be bad. I was expecting to enjoy that first chapter so much. So I was like, you know what? Let me talk about manga, because I'm feeling really good about manga right now. You know what I mean? So it's like stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's just like feeling very good about anime because it just feels a lot more accessible to me. I think that's the thing. Last thing I'll mention before I get to my conclusion of this is Claymore. I started Claymore a little bit because that was also on the Shonen Jump app, because it's kind of weird. I didn't expect Claymore of all things to be on the Shonen Jump app. But Claymore is acclaimed by manga fans as the female Berserk. And while it's not only that, it is kind of that. But the whole thing about it is that Claymore slaps. Just like Berserk slaps. So it's not like they're competing. It's like they both are two bad bitches get 2 cakes. You know what I mean? It's like you both are cool. Like it's not like one of the other. It's like, it's like you both are cool, So I think that with Claymore, I am enjoying it because the tone is a lot different than what Berserk was, what I'm reading of Berserk. Because where Berserk is like, they're both, kind of somber, dark fantasy narratives, but Claymore is mostly about like this kind of like, like a I guess kind of story about this girl who does not have any kind of emotional attachment to anybody, and she's growing kind of a heart and a soul over time or something like that, despite being a monster allegedly. And Berserk is kind of like that, but it's like mostly about like, I guess kind of like recovering from the continuous things that life throws at you, kind of like a narrative about keeping on, as it were. And I think that Claymore, being compared only to Berserk, while accurate in a way, it's not I wouldn't say it's kind of like, it's not demeaning because it's like very high praise, right? But calling it like the female Berserk is kind of like a little reductive, not like to the point where it's like, offensive. Like there's a lot of ones where it's like it's offensive, where it's like, oh, that's like not what it is at all. Like, no, I think it's a little reductive, but it's not ridiculous, right? It's like that's a good way to describe it in shorthand. But I think like, more people should read it and just consume it because it has a unique tone and like style of itself that is not similar to Berserk in ways. So I think that like, of course they're like I said, they're different artists, they're different people who like made it, right? And I think that what's it called? I think that you should try Claymore. I think you should try Claymore. It's a very cool manga. I really like it. It's we read the Viz little blurb. Claymore, sword-wielding woman warriors are humanity's only defense against supernatural beings of appallingly destructive power. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean that's basically it. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, yeah, Claymore is just cool. I think what can I say? I think it's chill. I think it's fire. But yeah, Claymore is cool. Go and read Claymore. I think that you should try it. underrated, actually, kind of underrated. I'm not sure how underrated it is in terms of like the totality of things, but like Claymore seems like one of those. 'Cause I heard about that from a friend. Claymore seems like one of those manga that like people like hear of in whispers. Like Berserk is like the critically acclaimed darling manga. Everyone's like, oh, I have to read Berserk. I'm like, oh yeah, Berserk is fucking fantastic, right? But I feel like, you know, Claymore is kind of left behind. I'm just comparing and contrasting them, but I'm saying like in comparison, you know what I mean? But I don't know. It's kind of hard to compare. But I think it's kind of hard to compare because you want to compare them, but you also don't want to compare them too much. But you know, I say watch the anime if you don't like manga, or try the manga. Also, there's a fucking DS game. What do you mean there's a DS game? What do you mean there's a DS game of Claymore? What do you mean it's a 2D side-scrolling action game? Is it just Castlevania? Because that's kind of sick. Yo, Claymore on DS? Also, by the way, a lot of manga don't get like really good game adaptations because Berserk has the same problem. So I mean, I hope that video game is better than Berserk's history. I mean, Berserk does have the Muso game. It does have, and the Dreamcast game is like all right. It's pretty good, I think. But it doesn't have like, you know, the one that's like, I guess Dark Souls is really the real Berserk game. But anyway, yeah. But yeah. Last thing I'll say in general is I like I said, I love reading. As you can tell, I just love information, right? So I think you should read more. The big topic of my channel is getting people to read. I really think people should read. Reading is cool. I think reading is very nice. It's very like informational, and especially if you talk like me, it like helps your fixations. You know, I could talk for hours about certain things, right? And gives me more fuel and ammo to yap. But I think it's very cool to read, very nice, very comforting, very very chill. Just are you chill like that? I'm pretty chill like that. But I recommend, you know, go to the library, maybe check out a book, maybe look at like the shelves, kind of just browse around, see a book that you like. Or like, you know, go onto your favorite manga site or app or whatever, and, you know, pick a manga to read and read that manga you've been trying to read for a long time. And I promise that you won't regret it. Even if the manga's bad, terrible, dog ass, you won't regret it. You know, there's very few things you can read and regret about it, you know, because it's not like a big waste of your time, because you're probably listening to this video in the background while you're doing fucking nothing. So it's not a really big waste of your time, you know. I think that reading is a very good use of your time, even if it's not like reading anything informational. It's not reading fucking Atomic Habits or some shit. Reading Rich Man, Poor Man, or some Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or some shit like that. You know, good use of your time, because, you know, it's just like your brain just loves it. Your brain loves processing that. It's like a puzzle. Your brain's very active in the thing of reading, because writing is basically just translated language, right? Because your ears hear it. They process that into audio form, but your brain has to translate those words into what your brain understands as meaning, right? So your brain is more active in the process of reading than listening or watching, because it has to like decode it essentially, and your brain remembers it because it has to put the effort in, I think. And also, I've been taking notes on a lot of stuff. That's kind of late to integrate that topic, but anyway. But yeah, go and read a book. Go and read a manga. Go and read a pamphlet. Go and read a textbook. Go and read the textbook that you got from college. Take notes on it. Go and read the candy wrapper at the back. Go and read something, anything. Go and read my Yuri story that I wrote on itch.io that I'd never mentioned this channel. That is like basically, since it's an hour into this, it's a secret. It's on my itch.io page. Go read that. Go read anything. Just go read a book about the Beach Boys. They have a couple of books. I like the Beach Boys. How can you not like the Beach Boys? Go read about the Beach Boys right now.